probably like with other things, you get disappointed, discouraged, but let it fuel you to move forward.
That's
as
a
opposed
good way to put it.
Sometimes it's tempting to let it paralyze you and be like, screw it, I'm done with it all. I'm going to find some land in the middle of nowhere and live off grid. But that's not what we're called to do. We're called to be salt and light is present.
We are here together to talk about life in Sharnessa land. This is Sharnessa Sanden, who's been a longtime friend, now a ministry partner. She's part of a board member on the City Serve board. She's also deeply connected with Father's House Church, happily married to the man sitting over there.
Yep.
And we're going to talk a little bit about who you are and what you've seen over your many, many years as you've grown up as a woman and become a force in Cowlitz County.
Oh, goodness.
It's exciting. It's exciting. So let's start off with, what was it like for you growing up in Longview? What was life like?
It was good. I grew up in Longview and Kelso both, and grew up going to Shekinah for as long as I can remember. When I believe I was about 2 when we were part of that church launch.
Church plant, yeah.
The church plant, yep, that's the word I was looking for. And great childhood. I mean, I had super consistent relationships, and I mean, beyond my parents and my brother at the time, because my sister was born many years later. My grandparents both lived on either side of the lake. So Grandma and Grandpa Edel on 22nd and Grandma and Grandpa Shelton on Maple, and tons of time with them over the years, and cousins, and then our church family, our neighborhood. We lived over on Torrey Lane for years and grew up with the classic 80s childhood, schools that I was homeschooled, but, when school got out and about 3 p.m., the street was flooded with about 30 kids. I mean, it was so many kids, and it was pretty ideal.
And no one worried about us.
No.
We just did whatever we wanted.
We did.
Yeah.
We did.
I shouldn't say that. I'm a totally different generation than you, but it was still like that. And when our kids were little, it was like, we're going to go play.
Yes. And that's what you did. It was, in fact, my brother just sent me a little graphic the other day of like the candies. We used the 10-cent boxes of candy that we used to walk over to Dickie's Deli and grab those, and just
bit of honey.
Yes. Oh, I still love those. Yeah. So it was a pretty special childhood. I mean, not that it was without bumps in the road, but pretty.
Have you noticed
special.
that the world has changed?
Just a bit. Yeah. Yeah.
It's remarkable. I was writing a story about what has changed since my childhood.
Okay.
And I literally was overwhelmed with everything that had changed and could not document it all because it was so extensive.
Wow.
So much has changed. I don't think until you sit down and think about it strategically, kind of or break it down.
Yeah.
There are so many things that are different.
Yep.
It's a different world.
Truly is.
The church is different.
Yep.
Homeschooling's different.
Yeah.
Back when you started homeschooling, you were kind of a unicorn.
Yes.
There weren't very many of you.
No.
Now it's much more popular, much more well accepted. You've homeschooled your kids. What was homeschooling like for you? Because you grew up in it.
Yes.
So it was just an expansion of what your mom did?
Yeah. Well, growing up homeschooling, I didn't know any different. We went to preschool. I don't remember how long. I have like 2 memories of going to preschool. And I believe it was that my dad was a Kelso cop for 39 years, and I think his overtime was cut back, so they couldn't afford preschool anymore. And my mom was like, oh my gosh, what are my kids going to do not going to preschool? So she, my aunt in Alaska had told her about a book called Homegrown Kids by Dr. Raymond Moore. And my mom bought it and reluctantly read it. And I was like, I'm never homeschooling my kids. What a dumb idea. And but she read it, and the Lord was absolutely convicting her to homeschool. And it changed from there on out. So we were homeschooling in, I think it was 1982. So I was 5, and there wasn't even legislation passed on homeschooling here. So it wasn't legal and it wasn't illegal. So we got lots of, looks and comments over the years, even going to the grocery store before 3 p.m. and there would be people like the cashier or whoever, well, what?
This is even before homeschool kids was a thing.
Oh yeah, totally.
Now it's kind of like a subgroup of humanity.
Yes, it's multiplied the number of families. I was just reading something the other day about the number of families like in the 80s. I'm terrible at remembering stats, but it was like 20,000, and then in the 90s it was this, and then now we're at like millions of families. But anyway, growing up with people like, what are you not doing, and why aren't you in school, little girl, and so got kind of used to being a unicorn, being different, and that's okay. And then I loved it, like as far as the experience itself. That was, again, back in the day, they wouldn't even, like curriculum companies wouldn't even sell their curriculum to homeschoolers. They would just turn you away and like, nope, we don't sell to you people, whatever. I don't know what
you people.
I don't know what term they use, but that's probably what it felt like to my mom. So she would
your mom became like a guru.
Yeah, because she had to. She would create her own. You could call it curriculum, but it was just like forms that she would make, and she's so creative. And so we did a lot of reading books, like real books together, not just textbooks, but like rich books, and reading them on our own or reading them together, doing lots of field trips, getting together with the other few unicorns in the area, and doing homeschooling things together. My mom would form different homeschool groups over the years that families would gather, and so I just knew growing up, like a lot of it was what we would call delight directed. So what are your passions, and running with that. Not that there weren't things that you still had to do that maybe you weren't thrilled about, like math for me, not a fan, but had to do it anyway. But for the most part, it was things that we were excited to learn about. And so I just knew in my gut one day that I wanted to homeschool my own kids. And so and
if they were sitting here today, what would they say about
my
homeschooling?
Boys, they love it. Absolutely. I can.
This might be a little bit of pitch for homeschooling.
That's right.
Here.
That's right. They love it. I mean, they even just yesterday, Weston, my 16-year-old, I guess it would have been the night before last. He's like, and he says this often, Mom, I'm excited to do school with you tomorrow. Like they just, they love it. They, not that, there's times that we're working through stuff or it's, a subject, usually it's around math, that is like they're not thrilled about, but they love it. They have both been allowed to explore things that and run with their own passions and expand on those. And we do, I think it's been amazing to watch. And I'm a kind of hopping over here a little bit. I'm a list person. I love lists and checking things off my list. Sometimes I'll even add something to my to-do list.
Just so you can check it off.
So I can check it off. I'm a freak, I know. But, so we'll be doing school, and I try to get a little bit of, not necessarily every day, like, because we'll start out, and usually we'll start 9:30 or 10 with, as far as the school part, but we'll start with the Word, and we'll usually watch some stuff on Right Now Media, like the Bible Project, and we're usually going through a devotional series, I guess, like by anybody from Francis Chan to Tony Evans to Louis Giglio, like all the different ones. They have great Bible series on Right Now Media. So the boys usually pick one of those series to go through, and then we'll do some reading. Like I'll do a lot of reading aloud, and then we'll sometimes take turns and then watch documentaries relating to what we're reading about. So, but sometimes, like this happened yesterday, where an issue comes up, whether it be something we're watching drew something out of one of the boys. Right. So, with the whole checking off thing, and I'm much better at this now, but probably, I don't know, some years ago, it would be hard for me to stop what we're doing because we need to get this done. And the Lord just has had to remind me, that this, like when we stop to deal with the heart issues, we stop what we're doing, watching that documentary, reading whatever, whether it be something one of the boys wants to process through. whether it be just a thought they have, or whether it be a hurt that came up, or mom needing to ask for forgiveness for something. Or so yesterday we stopped, and I don't remember what it was, but something that came up when we had just finished watching something, and the pause was for 45 minutes to an hour, and there were tears, and there was listening, and there was, a lot of processing through whatever that was. And the Lord just had to remind me, like, this is school. This is education. Yeah. This is a million times more important than anything that is going into their head, is who they're becoming, and learning how to be in relationships and processing what the Lord's doing in them. Like, this is not a detour. This is the point. So you grew up and had this opportunity to go into music, and you found yourself in Europe with your partner in the musical group, Vienna, Yep.
and met your husband. Of all places, I mean, you meet a guy from Sweden in Europe and ended up marrying him, and you come back to Longview and set up camp and do amazing things there. Do you ever look back at that and think, what are the chances that I would end up here? God must really be good at orchestrating things.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. It's wild. I remember before leaving for Bible school, which is where Sam and I met in London, and before the music stuff, actually. And I remember Patty Nelson telling me at Shekinah before I left, she was like, and I had never, to back up, I had never heard of getting your MRS degree. Like, I'd never heard that, like, of going off to Bible college to find your spouse. It just was not on my radar. I'd somehow missed that. And I remember Patty Nelson telling me at Shekinah shortly before I left, she was like, in her fabulous East Coast accent, she was like, oh, you're totally going to find your husband when you're over there. And I was like, I am not. How impractical is that, to meet somebody from another country? I was just like, oh, Patty, no way. She was right. She was right. Yeah. She knew. And so we met at Bible school in London, and then through the school, I auditioned for the band, and then we moved up north to Manchester after a couple of years in London, and did the band thing. But our record deal was in Nashville, so we did a lot of back and forth between the States and Europe. Yeah. And then eventually, right after 9/11, ended up back here. Yeah. In Longview.
And Sam ended up working with the church here as a youth pastor.
Yep.
You're a worship leader extraordinaire. And you started a dance studio.
We did.
Where did that inspiration come from?
Well, it's not very glamorous. So we ended up back here, I think it was October 2001, so literally a few weeks after 9/11. And we're like, okay, what do we do? Because we were in Nashville during 9/11.
Yeah.
And trying to figure out what to do. He didn't have his green card. He was not a citizen yet. And we were just trying to figure out, like, how do we make ends meet? He had been, they had started to talk with him about youth pastoring at Father's house. And there was a lot of transitioning happening at that time within, Chuck moving to being the senior pastor, and all these different things were happening. I think that was starting to happen. Maybe he was moving more into the worship stuff first. And so we were like, okay, what do we do? Like, to start just bringing in some money for right now. And so we talked about dancing, and like, maybe there would be some family and friends who would have pity on me and come take some dance classes. And like, sure, we'll take dance classes from you.
So are you the one that's got the entrepreneurial spirit?
I think so. I think we both do.
And that probably came out of your homeschool experience.
Absolutely.
Being creative.
Absolutely. And watching my mom too, because while my dad was the cop, we also had the home business of the books that my mom wrote and the homeschool course she offered. And I was their secretary starting at 15. So I just watched them
And you probably thought you could do anything you wanted to.
Well,
because you're resourceful and you're creative and you're...
Try to be resourceful for sure. Yeah. And so we had a kind of what we called a dance clinic on a Saturday in October of 2001. And I think 45 people came, and they were like, can we keep doing this? And we said, sure. So Father's House was so gracious to let us use the sanctuary. what ended up being for many years after that, we bought closet door mirrors from Home Depot and would keep them in a closet there, and we would wheel them out for every class. And so by the end of our first dance year, which would have been like May 2002, we had 45 students that had stayed with us. And then the next year we continued that next fall after the summer break and had 90 students the next year. And
were you the first dance studio in the area?
Oh, no.
Because that's like 22 years ago. That's a long time.
No. There was a Performing Arts Center, which is where I first started taking dance when I was 12. I took tap there for 4 years. And then I moved on with Sandy, who started high step.
Yeah, I remember that.
Took from her for a few years. So, and Evergreen has been here for so many years too. And yeah.
So what is it about your dance studio that is so dang attractive to people? Because you've always been, from the moment you started, a really popular place to learn. What is it about that environment you think that kind of is attractive to people? I know it's kind of a hard thing for you to answer, but.
We have our teachers. My teachers are amazing people. Very talented, but as equally as they are talented, and probably even more, they're quality people who love people's kids. And actually, not even just kids. I have people from 3 years old up to probably 63. So we got a mom's class too. So people are loved. They're loved well.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
I think that there's a family kind of feel about things.
Yep.
That it may not be part of it. And that's not putting down anybody else and what they do, but it's just it's a unique situation. It's almost like a congregation.
Yeah.
Definitely. You have that sense that you're pastoring a congregation of people.
Yep. And I think also we've just made sure that costumes are modest, music is appropriate, dance moves are appropriate, because it's just so easy for that stuff. Even for kids to start to get inappropriate really fast. And it just doesn't have to be. I mean, if that's what people want to do, that's their business. But it's never lost on me when there will be a dad that comes up after a recital and was like, I was so blessed to not have to turn my head during my kid's performance, or somebody else's performance. So those kinds of things are always just encouraging. I mean, and a million other different compliments that after a recital, it's just overwhelming. Yeah. The encouragement that we get that reminds us that we're doing what we're called to do, and we're making a difference.
And you're doing it well.
That's just because it's hard. I mean, running a business is hard. I would say post 2020, it's been a whole other. I mean, we almost lost the studio. So March of 2020. Right before everything, we were at 270 students. And then come all the ins and outs of the in-person and online and back and forth. We were down to 40 students the fall of 2020 and had to decide how we were going to, what we were and weren't going to follow anymore, where we stood, because we were down to fewer students than when we started almost 20 years before that. So, yeah, we had some pretty big decisions to make.
And that was kind of a pivotal emotional point for you guys.
Oh, yeah.
Because at that point, when you decided, what are we going to do or not do, became a whole different focus for your lives that you kind of moved into the whole political realm, supporting a candidate. And then integrating it with your faith. Yeah. And that has been a huge transition for you.
Yeah.
How would you describe that transition? I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it seemed like that moment when the dance studio suffered because of the regulations that had to do with COVID, you made a decision, no, we're going to do things differently.
Yeah. I think probably we have to back up a little bit, because personally, the rest of, I would say the world, but that's dramatic. So the rest of the United States, kind of starting in maybe more April 2020, people were kind of having to decide where they, not decide, but think about what you think about, know what you think about our nation and our history, our founding fathers, our founding documents. Like who are we really?
Right.
And so for us, the studio definitely as a business, there was a lot of just wrestling, not in the sense of with each other, but over issues and figuring out who are we? Because individually as like a person and a couple and a family, we came to those conclusions probably more in April and May of 2020 than the business side of things was still obviously related, but a little bit different in that we have to figure out where are our staff and
because you're taking care of families.
Yeah.
You're providing income for families.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a place for people to come to. And so personally, it was earlier in the year. Business-wise, we finally, and it would have been when things were at their lowest, numbers-wise, where we were like, we're going to have to either continue to go with mandates that aren't constitutional and that people are fed up with.
Mm-hmm.
People were fed up with online. I mean, anything online was like so over it.
Yeah.
But dance classes just are no fun online.
It would suck.
They did suck so bad. I mean, even as teachers, because all of us teachers take classes from each other. And so even as teachers taking classes, we're like, this is so rough. I mean, no problem for the 2 weeks to flatten the curve.
Yeah.
But when it went far beyond that, it was like, okay, where do we stand as a studio? And so we came to that conclusion like December of 2020, sitting down with our staff and telling them where we're at and finding out. And we knew we'd had so many conversations with our staff who were, on the same page, but we kind of had a bigger conversation in December when I think we were in another phase, like we had regressed back to, I don't know. That's like, I think it's all
second wave,
out.
third wave COVID.
Yes. Yeah. So we decided.
I think we forget how big a deal that. I mean, it was almost like, I remember when we were in it, we were saying, this changes everything. We're never going to go back.
Yeah.
Guess what? We went back to normal and almost forgot how tenuous that time was, how difficult it was for us. It was your business that you were worried about not being able to continue.
Yes, and that's what we had to decide was basically pick your poison. Do we want to, and this is kind of what we said to the staff at in this conversation. Like I said, we'd had many before and hashing through stuff and venting and all the things as a staff together. Again, on the same page, like we're so grateful for that, but had to decide we're down to fewer students than when we began in 2001. So this is we're not on a good trajectory right now. So either we're going to die as a studio potentially because people are fizzling out because they're done, or we're going to, or it's going to be, because we're going to keep following these protocols, or we're going to, phase out as a business because we've decided to just stand our ground and let Inslee do whatever he's going to do.
Yeah.
With,
and standing your ground is a big deal.
Yeah. And
it ended up being a really big deal for you and Sam because standing your ground meant shifting your attention to some other things that you may not have paid all that much attention to, but now they're really important because wait a minute, our lives are really important. Our families are really important. Our friends are really important. We're going to make a stand for them too.
100%. That's part for us. That's part of loving your neighbor.
Yeah.
So,
and when did Heidi come into the picture? Because that was the first time you guys really got really involved, right?
Yes, really super involved. Well, just to back up really fast about when we made that decision as Sam and I and as the staff, it was like 3-4 days later that Inslee changed phases again, and we actually weren't going to be doing anything that would have possibly allowed penalties or whatever he would have done. I don't know. So just had to finish that up with that. We were like, we had made that decision, and then we didn't actually have to do that because of the yet again another phase. So, but yes, so with Heidi, what actually happened was May of 2020, when we were just starting to feel like this isn't right, where things are not lining up, what's going on, what's really going on. Josh Freed came into the picture. And were you at that meeting too? Okay, I thought I remembered you were at the Kelly Hall. And so that was the first time we really got involved as far as a campaign went. Before that, we had been involved in the one campaign for 10 years. So we were involved in the political realm on the federal level and going to DC.
I forget about that.
Yeah.
That was a long time.
It was.
And you made some tough decisions in that arena too.
Yes.
That were based on your integrity and
Yep.
what you felt was important. So
yep. In fact, we had just right before everything went down with 2020, we had just been in DC earlier in March of 2020 for what we did not know would be our final one campaign leader summit. It was my 10th and Sam's 9th. And so we got to bring Chase with us, who was 14 at the time. So he got to do all the training with us and then go on the Hill with us and lobby all our elected officials. And that actually, that's when sort of that realm got lit in him.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful he got that experience. So on a federal level and in a totally different arena, we had been involved politically. And there always was something in me that was drawn to that world. Like there was something in me that I feel like it's just something that was innate. And so then we're at May 2020, and then we showed up at Josh's thing, and we're like, this guy, we felt like he was the only one that really stood a chance to win against Inslee.
Yeah.
And so because of his specifically, I mean, he's awesome guy, businessman, loves Jesus, but also because of his pull in King County. We needed King County, Pierce County, Snohomish. And so we got behind him, used our voices, and just sort of, as things went, tried to figure out what can we do with our little spheres of influence? How can we make a difference because if everybody gets that within their own spheres of influence, that they can truly, without sounding cliche, they can make a difference. Truly, we can make an impact. And so, because I can't influence the people that are in your sphere of influence and so on and so forth. So we just tried to make a little difference in our little world. And so we're with him through the primary, and then he didn't end up making it through. He switched, and it was a write-in campaign for him to become lieutenant governor. So we pushed for that and went, on board with that from August to November. And he didn't make that either, but campaigns are such a huge learning curve. It's a massive education that I didn't know that you get because I'd never been involved in one. So then fast forward to what would be February 2021. And I had known Heidi for years through the homeschool world and would, see her at things, or she knew my mom. My mom was like an influence on her life for homeschooling. Because her kids, Heidi's kids are like...
Heidi St. John is who we're talking about.
Sorry, Heidi St. John, yes. Yeah. Her kids are... Now they're basically like 13 to 33. So the kind of, next down from us. So my mom was an influence in her life. So we've always just had little connections over the years, not like super close, but we know each other. And she had connected me with her younger sister to get to know each other some years before that. So she calls me in February of 2021 and is like, hey, I'm thinking of running for Congress. Would you be my Cowlitz campaign lead? And I was like, let me talk to Sam, but sure. And so, but we had a really great conversation, and I talked to Sam, and I think I said yes in that conversation, but that race was not going to be until what would have been, the primary of 2022.
Right.
So we worked for a year and a half with her. And again, even more of an education, even more.
When you're saying education,
yes.
You really mean education too.
Like nothing else.
Like it's the whole political realm is something that you don't know anything about unless you're in it.
Yeah.
You can't stand back and watch and get it. Mm-mm. You have to go and be involved.
Yep.
And I'm sure you learned a ton.
Good, bad, ugly. Like the things that you see are, it was very disappointing, even like in our own party, actually, probably as much as other things.
But you didn't get discouraged.
There were, oh yeah.
At times it was tough.
Yes. Oh yeah. Oh, it was, yes, really hard sometimes. But not discouraged to stop. It's like you get, probably like with other things, you get disappointed, discouraged, but let it fuel you to move forward,
That's
as opposed
a good way to put it.
Sometimes it's tempting to let it paralyze you and be like, screw it, I'm done with it all. I'm going to find some land in the middle of nowhere and live off grid. But that's not what we're called to do. We're called to be salt and light is present and we don't get to run away. I don't think we as believers have the privilege of running away or privilege. I don't know if that's the right word, but we don't have the we don't have the option there. That's the right word, to just run away. So absolutely discouraging, lots of discouraging moments, but that's what I mean by the education too. Like you learn the logistics of things, but you also learn some pretty disappointing things about whether it be people or movements or this or that. But it also, I think it's all, like I said already, it's all meant to educate us, equip us, and fuel us to change things, as opposed to just whining about the problem. Yeah.
And there's something about the whole nature of biblical understanding that undergirds us.
Yes.
It's almost like now we have an opportunity to put our biblical values into practice. Yeah. And there's just nothing like it. There's nothing like being able to live out. Like, I'm kind of a relationship junkie, but I'm not that weird because Jesus was a relationship junkie. So I can fall back on that and find a great deal of encouragement and strength in having a relationship with people, because that's what the Bible talks about doing.
That's right.
Loving one another.
That's right.
And making allowances for each other's faults and pursuing one another. And
and you're amazing at all of that.
And thank you. And so the political system needs that.
Yes.
The political system needs people like that who have that foundation, not pounding people over the head with Bibles, but
no.
Let's do things right. Let's do things well. Let's do things deeply.
Yes.
Let's be passionate about what we're doing.
Yep.
Let's care.
Yeah.
And you do that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Coming out. So you have not just been involved, but now you are kind of the focal point in this area of Christians who take their biblical faith and live it out. I mean, there are people who are looking at you and Sam and going, these guys are a great example of what it means to be a Christian and be public about it in a way that doesn't just profit them, but they're serving like government, serving the political, serving the community at a really high level. I think that's astounding. That's just my opinion. I just think it's great that you guys have had the moxie to step up and live out your faith the way that you have. But it's probably cost you a little bit too.
For sure. But it's worth it. I mean, I don't love the cost always. 'Cause you hear things and it's hard to hear those things, but I feel like back to that loving your neighbor, that the love your neighbor scripture was used for a lot of lockdown for other things. But at the end of the day, we feel like loving your neighbor is fighting for, not to get into issues themselves, but it's fighting for what this nation is built on. I feel like that's ultimately what loving your neighbor is them having the right to choose, like whether somebody agrees with me or not. I may wish that they agreed with me, because that's just more fun and peaceful when we're, on the same page. But I respect even somebody who thinks wildly different than me, unless it's starting to actually, hurt, if we're going to talk about kids and different things going on with attacks on our kids. obviously
the
that's
mama bear just came to
right.
life.
Yes, that's a whole other thing. But as far as somebody having a different political, a belief in a different political system, what Sam and I are doing politically is fighting for their right to believe what they want to believe just as much as it is for people who believe what I believe. And so I think we, the people, have gotten lazy. I think we as the church have forgotten, not that I don't believe that everybody is supposed to be involved in politics in the same way. But I think that where we're at now is because we haven't at all. Like the numbers of voters in the church is abysmal. Like
if you can just get the church to vote.
Even just that. And so I think politics have become, the word politics even, like I've seen a lot of people, and there's actually a graphic that I was going to be posting today or tomorrow, but talks about how so many people sort of even with an air of pride are like, oh, I don't do politics. Right. But it's like, you might as well say, oh, I don't care about my grandkids' future. I don't care about the state of, we could go into so many things, but we've somehow turned politics we've separated it from daily life. Right. Politics affects policy. Policy affects every day of our lives. And so we've relinquished that role. So many of us, myself included, until 4.5 years ago, relinquished it to people who happily took it on and have their own agenda. And, that saying where they say, that you can't legislate morality. Someone's morality is getting legislated. Yeah. So my morality, like you were talking about, it's not about hitting people over the head with Bibles. And I think that's what a lot of people, including believers, a lot of believers have turned it into, is you can't legislate morality. Well, again, somebody's morality is getting legislated. And while there's this thing put on believers that want to be involved in politics as, you just want a theocracy. Yeah. You just want to, you're a Christian nationalist. Actually, a Christian nationalist, like as opposed to a whatever globalist. Like, I do believe that God loves nations, and it talks in the Word about Jesus' inheritance is nations, and that means nations consist of borders, and nations consist of individual people, because He delights in what individual nations are called to bring to the world. And we as Americans, I do believe that we have a very special role in the world. We're not better than, but I believe we have more responsibility than many, and that privilege brings responsibility. Yeah. Right?
And it's work.
It is.
It's not like sit back and vote.
No.
But it's getting involved and letting your biblical values be lived out in front of it. It's kind of like you can go to church and live your life. And you know how some people say, I have my church life and then I have the rest of my life. Yeah. And I don't usually let those two mix, which makes absolutely no sense at all. Right. Because values are values. Right. They should come out in everything you do.
Right. So why should biblical values not come out in politics, which literally affect everything that we do? They literally do affect our everyday lives. And as America goes, so goes the rest of the world. Like, we have people in other nations who are praying for and rooting for America and where we're headed. Hopefully headed in a good direction, because they know that our status in the world affects other nations. It just does. And so it's not just about America, like we're the best and we're this and we're that. Right. We have a responsibility for our own nation, and then also for how our standing in the world affects other countries as well. And so to me, it is about loving your neighbor. And it is not like again, back to the theocracy thing. As a conservative, this isn't about I think we're also so far beyond Republican and Democrat, right? We're at like this place where I really do believe that there is a plenty of Republicans that are like the part of, uniparty or whatever you want to call it, where they are pushing for very elitist agendas and that are moving toward a global kind of a vision. And so as a conservative, I'm going to fight that. But my heart is not, and I literally don't know anybody. I know so many conservatives, and this is not any other conservatives that I know, their heart either, to make to create a society where if you don't believe that what we believe, this will happen to you. If you don't believe what we believe, go to jail. If you don't believe what this, that's not who we are. But I think that's what happens with so many people that don't believe what we believe, right. Christians and non, that we're trying to create a theocracy when that's actually not at all.
It's not going to be valuable.
Right.
Because then it's whoever has the most amount of votes, their religion becomes the theocracy.
Absolutely.
And that can get turned around pretty quickly too. So
yes.
Yeah, it's not in our best interest to advocate for theocracy.
Yep.
Because then it's whose religion are we talking about now?
Yep. We just want freedom. That's what we're fighting for, is freedom, so people can do what they as individuals feel called to do, whether they agree with since you and I are doing the interview here, whether they agree with me and my politics or not. So,
but all they have to do is invite you out for coffee, and they'll find out pretty quickly what you think and how you feel.
Yeah.
Because you don't hide that. And I love that about you. I love the fact that you are so aggressively open about who you are. You're an intense person when it comes to love. You're an intense person when it comes to family. You're an intense person when it comes to religion. Why wouldn't you be intense with politics as well?
Yeah.
That's just who you are. We could do this for a long time, because there's areas of your life, Sharnessa, that we haven't even thought about talking about yet. But I so appreciate who you are, the woman you've become, the friend you've become, the co-partner in ministry that you've become. And I really appreciate you sitting down today and talking about the things that are really personal to you, because I think some people would be astounded if they knew you, who you really are. And I hope that happens. I hope within the future that people watch this and they think, I want to know that girl. And so thank you for today.
Thank you. It means a lot. You're wonderful, Jeff. Love you, brother.